Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar merchandise review. This one is going to be for Avatar Shashibos. So straight away, this is just kind of like an Avatar licensed version of kind of normal Shashibos, which of course are transforming cubes. Most of them come in sort of more generic kind of just patterns of like shapes and colors, but of course they do the licensed ones as well. So they have Avatar, they have SpongeBob, TMNT, and I think some other stuff as well. So I have 2 of the 4 Avatar cubes. So as you can see here by the face that I'm showing you, it is 1 for each element. So they have air, water, but they also do have fire and earth. The only reason I have 2 of them and not all 4 of them is that they are somewhat expensive for what they are. Now, I do think it's a very interesting kind of toy item, but at the full price, it's like 28 euro. The second one I got on Black Friday sale for more like 22, and it feels a lot better at that price point. But because it's more of a sort of almost kind of like gimmicky kind of toy, it kind of feels a little bit kind of like, do I want to spend nearly 100 on the 4 Avatar ones? It is a sort of unique set of 4 Avatar collectibles, but you know, how much use are you going to get out of them? It depends on how into what these things are it actually is for you. So straight away, let's take a kind of quick look at these. So obviously they open out into a variety of different shapes, but when you get it, it is just a cube. And as you can see here, the way they do it here, 2 of the sides of the cube are the symbol, and then on the other sides you have stock imagery of the various characters. So the water one has Aang, who of course is also a waterbender as well because he's the Avatar, but you also have Katara. When I open it up, you'll see that there's Sokka and some more Katara on the inside, plus some of the other colors start to come out. On the air one here, you can see 2 of the sides are air symbol, but then you can see we have some Aang here. There's an interesting kind of side here representing, like, I suppose, the Avatar as well, with the more kind of basic symbols. And again, more stock imagery. So from an Avatar perspective, they are not the most interesting thing because they do just use a lot of the very common and popular Avatar promo art that we've seen over the last few years. Now, it is the more up-to-date stuff, but still art that is, you know, 4 or 5 years old that we have seen for the last while. There's no new art associated with it. What I think makes these stand out a little bit more than just, oh, it's that image again, is sort of the layout of the art. Because of what these things are when you start to open them out, it is a somewhat like interesting way they lay out the images so that it actually looks interesting as you go through the various shapes. So now let's get into the idea of, okay, what is a Shashibo? Why is it a transforming cube? So when you look around it, of course, you can sort of see that there are kind of openings here, seams on various faces of it. Some of them don't have it, or, you know, it's not an opening necessarily, it's just a kind of rotation point. But there are 2 of the corners where 3 of those seams come together. So you can see this corner here, but then also the reverse side here is also where it comes together. This is where you open it up. You can't open it up anywhere else because you're going to open up one of the actual kind of foldable seams rather than the actual openings. But once you get to one of the areas you can open it up, you just kind of grab one of the corners and you basically just fold it out. Now, you use the magnets that keep it together to kind of keep it in position as you go through. Because if you just do it really aggressively, you might open up all the kind of magnets and you'll get all over the place. So if you do it sort of step by step, you can go through the various stages of transforming it here. But effectively what we've done here, you can see in this corner, we've kept part of the cube and we've just taken the kind of one half of it and just kind of literally folded it up onto itself. And this is what they call the sort of crown shape here, where it opens up specific sections of it, and you can see some of the interior sections here with the blue, but also some of the purple, and then even inside here, which is not fully visible just yet, there's some of the other images on the inside. The next step that you do is you basically take the corner you didn't fold and also fold that one down. while kind of trying to keep this one in the same position. So as you bring that down like this, you can see we form this interesting star shape. So the cube has now become this pretty large star. Like, given that the cube is obviously this size, like you can see it's really opened out into quite a large shape here, where it's kind of signified by this kind of triangle here with the blue points. If we flip it around the other side, you can see there's also a triangle with the purple points. So there's some cool visual stuff as you kind of go through it when it comes to like, oh yeah, that's kind of cool in terms of trying to keep track of what shape I'm in, what I'm trying to get towards. This helps you keep track of like, oh, the purple is here, so I can link those two bits together to get to one of the sort of set shapes overall. But then one of the other things that can happen is that these can combine. Because they're all magnetic, they can combine if you get them into the right kind of orientation, of course. So one thing that you can do is if we open up the air one here, so I'll open this up into sort of the same shape, the star. So you can see this is the air one, where we get the corners, instead of just being colors, are kind of, we have the Momo corners. And then on the other side, you have the Appa corners. And then also on the inside, you can start to see that there's some air temple and other images as well. So that's quite cool, just the two of them in the same shape here. But if we then proceed to further kind of transform this and actually kind of flip it completely inside out, and again, this is where just being aware of where each image is and what each image's shape kind of means, you can get to this shape. So you can see we turn it from a cube completely inside out into, this is a dodecahedron, which is a 12-sided shape. It's not a, I don't think it's a regular dodecahedron, but it's the one that you can make using these kind of diamond shapes. But yeah, 12 sides, and it's obviously a quite interesting shape. But the fun part about it is that this shape perfectly fits in here. So you can see there, now we've filled that kind of gap at the center of the star. This is one of the ones where it doesn't quite like lock in magnetically, but it does fit in kind of nicely because it's a pretty tight fit. It's accurately put together, but it's kind of that sort of stuff that's quite cool, of just like, here is the shape, here's the mirror of that shape, they can link together. Here's this, here's like the reverse of that shape, and it can also sort of fit together, and that's very, very cool. But then you can also do kind of other things as well, which is kind of fun, where like one thing you can do is basically take the points here and sort of like, I suppose I'm more talking about this one here. Say like, take this point and rotate it inwards into the middle, and you'll get a situation kind of like this, where you start to fill in that gap in the middle with a different kind of shape here. So this is also one of the cool things you can do, and you get a sense for how it kind of specifically works. The clearance can be a little bit awkward to deal with, just because to flip this one inside, I kind of have to undo part of what I've done already. But like, once you keep track roughly of what you're trying to do, like, okay, I'm trying to reverse this section while it's still open, I just need to make sure I keep this one in the same position, you can kind of get there. So you can see there, for instance, is 2 of the points in, and then we just need to bring the last point in. So when we open that up, we eventually get to this shape. So it's the same triangle with the colored points on this water one, but now it's been filled in the middle with, again, it's that kind of partial dodecahedron shape, but this time, of course, it's just one of them. So it's just one face of that, and this gives you the Katara image here. But also the reverse shape is also kind of interesting, where you can see there's a indentation here for the cube, and it's made these kind of triple points, which is kind of interesting and unique. And again, you can basically like reverse this shape to make the same thing with the purple corners, but it's a socket image on the inside. Yeah, so we just again try and kind of reverse it backwards, following the kind of shapes, and we can pretty quickly get to, yeah, here is socket in the middle of the purple corners, and that's very, very cool. And then the same goes for like a lot of these things. There's just like some very interesting kind of combinations overall that you can get to. So once you see some of the set patterns, it allows you to then, I can just reverse some of this stuff to get back to like the initial shapes overall. So I'll turn this one back into the cube, like so. And you'll note that there's a kind of indentation here for the cube. And we can just slot that in like that. Now, some sides, like this side, it fits in very nicely magnetically. Other sides, it will have the repelling kind of magnetic thing going on. But some sides it fits in quite nicely, and you can see it makes a more sort of complete shape where there's not a giant gap, and this is something that happens like continuously kind of throughout this, which is really, really cool. One other thing actually, while I keep the water one in that same position, is this shape here. If I can try and get this one, you make this shape. So you can see, depending on kind of the angle you look at this from, it almost looks like a 3D drawing of a bunch of cubes, but it is just kind of clever use of the geometry. On the other side, you can see it is again our initial cube kind of folded outward in a very different way. But again, you'll note the interesting thing here. We've got a gap for a cube and 3 spikes. What we have here is a spike cube and gap for 3 points. So these actually combine together, like so, into this interesting shape, like so, which is quite cool. And then again, you can clearly see what you can do kind of going forward from here. Of if you make this shape again with 2 of them, and then you bring 2 more together in the same shape, you can start to kind of really build some big, dense shapes overall. So it's just really cool the way it all kind of works, in my opinion. Now, it obviously helps if you kind of have that kind of interest or that mind for like geometry, and kind of like knowing and the spatial awareness of like, oh, if I twist it this way, we'll get back into these positions quite quickly. But I think these two kind of show it quite clearly. Again, we're in the kind of filled in triangles. And again, if you just bring 2 of the sides together, you get some very cool kind of angles going on, and you get the sense that like, oh yeah, if I brought another one in here and another one in here, it'd be this really cool shape that has all these like spikes on the outside, which is it's just cool in that way. But then what if we just bring the sides together, and then you get this kind of bigger shape? We're going kind of really wide here, but you can see the idea of like, look at that kind of double cube kind of gap in the middle, that here is like a quarter of a shape. So if we had 1, 2 more, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 along the top, we could make this giant ball like kind of cubes thing with a bunch of them together. And you can really see how you can just continue to kind of stack them on top of each other because they are magnetic. So with that out of the way, let's show you some of the other kind of combination stuff that you can do. So what do I need to do? I need to get 1 completely inside out, and then 1 back into the cube to show this. Cube. So this is the kind of water kind of blue ball, where you can see it is basically what I sort of showed you before, where like on one face of it you do have the socket image, and then on the other side of it is the Katara image, and it's just interesting the way it all kind of works together. But what is interesting about this shape is that it does, in the middle of it, it's actually a hollow if you take a look inside. It actually has the cube completely reversed in the middle, as in there is a gap that is the perfect size for a cube to fit in. And so yeah, you can just do that. You can just put the cube inside of this. But there's another thing you can do. It's not just the kind of cool thing of like, oh, I can hide one cube within the other, even though they're the same thing. What you can also do is if you line up the seam openings on both shapes, because you'll note here that even on the dodecahedron, it is 3 openings kind of coming together here. And of course, you open this at a place where 3 of the side openings comes together. So if you line up those seams together, as you place the cube inside, you get this very interesting thing where, of course, you can see here, the air cube is now inside of this. And so yeah, it's fully covered. This is 2 of them together in a shape that one of them can make, which is just cool by itself. But then if we go back and open it, you'll see here a very interesting situation where we can actually open both at the same time and manipulate them together. So for instance, that's just kind of pulling out one section, but you'll note it's one combined thing. Like to a certain degree, unless you're really keeping track of the different images for each one, it just looks like it's now one thing completely conjoined together. And now we get, this is the kind of double star. This is, you can see our interior triangle with the kind of hexagon hole in the middle. But now we have the water one along the outside, but we still have the same idea of like the reverse kind of triangle on the outside and so on. And you can just kind of manipulate this as you kind of want. There's not as many options with it in this kind of makeup, just because already there are limitations with just the way the seams and the kind of clearance that you have on one, and it's doubled with this. So there's only a handful that you can make, but it's just cool that you can actually morph it around all kind of interlinked like this, and it's just cool. And like, wow, can I ever get the two of them apart again? Because in certain situations they're actually knitted together in such a way where you can't just like pull it out here. So you do have to sort of morph it back into, for instance, you have to morph it back into like the ball and basically like open it out again to get our cube out. And there's a cool aspect to that as well. And then this is actually, I think, a good shape to show you guys as well. You can morph it into this thing, which I think helps to highlight what the actual makeup of it actually is. Because when it's in its cube form, it doesn't maybe give you a sense for how exactly like it functions or how it was like constructed. But when you see it sort of like this, with very few of the magnetic things actually like used, it gives you a sense for like, so that's how it's actually like put together. But the reality of it is that like when you open it up fully, none of the magnets used. It is this kind of just interesting ring of these kind of triangular shapes that are kind of attached together in this kind of very specific way. And then the magnets kind of bring it together into a specific shape, of course, which is just a cool kind of system overall. But from this position here, one of the things that you can actually do is, let me just see, can I get this? Yeah, you get this shape, which is a half dodecahedron. So if I just keep this like this, and I turn the other one into the full dodecahedron, you can kind of see kind of what's going on here. And this is I think just one of the more cool aspects of Shashibos overall. Now some people might just be like, hey, that's a cool shape, but if you enjoy the sort of interesting kind of geometry stuff kind of happening here, there is a kind of very much fun factor to it. So if we kind of match up sort of the shapes like this, you can sort of see the idea here of like both the same initial cubes, but you can actually form the cube into a kind of half thing that's quite dense, or a full dodecahedron. Also highlighting that I could transform this one into a half dodecahedron and actually link the two of them together to form this shape, but with two of them. And there's just a kind of very interesting idea of just how the shapes mesh together to kind of get rid of some of the volume at some times if it's folded up correctly versus not. So that's super cool. Final ones, I suppose. The one I should end with is definitely the box, because this is one where it uses a shape that the cube doesn't like necessarily full on lock into, but it kind of opens up the door to like, yeah, that there is actually a bunch of stuff you can do here. So how do I get to here again? Yeah, we have to get it into this shape. We have to get both of them into this shape. But what we do effectively is on the back, we bring the corners of the 3 points together like this. Then what we do is we kind of we open this out so it turns into like a cube. So you can see here we kind of connect it together like that, open it out. So the bottom is this square, and that leaves the top looking in this kind of interesting shape where it's quite thick here, but there's like an opening here with just one of the points on the corners kind of sticking up. But what's interesting about it is that this is not a locked in position. It's it doesn't magnetize here, and this bit is also kind of free floating. But if you just hold it in that position and just place it down, that is half of the shape that we're going to make. And then all we have to do is transform the other one into the exact same shape. We'll then mirror it by literally just turning it upside down, and we'll get our cube. And it just kind of is a interesting kind of situation of like how it all works. There you can see both have the same shape. So if we just kind of turn these kind of upside down and link them together, we get our box formed with two of them together. This is one of the more cool combinations because it's not just attaching two sort of like very separate shapes together. This is just an odd thing that they can both form, but it's one of the cleaner shapes in terms of how it locks together. So that's kind of cool. And obviously the idea of if you had two more and you made the same shape, you could link those two together, and there's just a cool kind of almost building aspect to it when you have multiple of these as well. So yeah, that's what's going on here. So for me, it's one of those situations where like the sort of recommendation is, as an avatar piece of merchandise, I wouldn't say it's the most interesting thing if you don't like what a Shashibo actually is. If you are very interested by what a Shashibo is, then I think it is like you should probably get at least one of them, maybe for your favorite element. I think it is more fun when you have two and you can at least do a little bit of combining, just because there is only so many shapes one on its own can transform into. But again, I will note that they are sort of expensive for what they are, so kind of suggesting that people just immediately go out and buy all four of them is quite an ask. But I think I enjoyed enough. I like my geometry, so it's one of those things where I kind of feel like I might feel a little bit disappointed if I miss an opportunity to complete my set of four. So I probably am at some point going to grab the fire and earth one and just mess around and see what kind of crazy shapes I can make with four of them, because then all of a sudden it opens the door to some of the, obviously the shapes that it's actually made out of is got four sides to it in a lot of cases, so you can kind of construct kind of like cube-like structures from it, and that's just interesting by itself. So yeah, a weird one here definitely, where just on the basis of what like art is on these, the avatar aspect is not particularly impressive, but I do like that sort of like the element symbols are quite prominent and that the theming of them is at least, I think, pretty nice. I definitely feel that the variety of art could be a little bit better, just because like Aang is on like all of them, and I think they could have done it maybe slightly differently, but like I said, you get cool things where it's just like the way they did some of the pattern stuff is actually quite interesting. I almost think maybe one of the better options might be actually to, if you do plan to get your favorite element plus maybe one of the more generic Shashibos that is just patterns. That way it's just patterns surrounding your favorite avatar characters, rather than the kind of weird amalgamations that you sort of times get here, where it's like, look, it's Aang's body, Appa's face, and Katara's arm on one corner, and, you know, it's two sides of a symbol split up, but, you know, that's just that. So, in the comments, let me know what your thoughts are. Do you have any Shashibos, or do you have any avatar Shashibos? What are your thoughts on these? Are you interested in them at all? I didn't know what to expect when I got my first one, but I think it's just a really fun thing to just kind of mess around with, and especially if you look up videos on how to form kind of quite unique shapes, you can get a lot of, I think, enjoyment out of it overall. So I think it's a cool thing, especially coming up to Christmas. Like, this is, I think, a decent gift for an Avatar fan, where probably the high likelihood is a lot of people won't have one of these in their collection, and it's a fun, I think, gift type thing. So I think the timing of this video is going to be pretty decent overall. So let me know what your thoughts are below, but that has been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.